Hello and welcome to Fire in the Belly. Today we have myself, Mighty Pete, and we're joined by Dr. Malie Coyne. Good afternoon, or good evening, I should say, at this point.
Good evening, Pete. How are you? Mighty Pete.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So tell us, who are you, where do you come from, and what do you do?
So I'm Dr. Malie Coyne, or Malie Coyne, and where do I come from? That's a question. I'm half Dutch, half Irish. My father's Dutch, my mother's Irish. I live in Galway, and I am a clinical psychologist working with children, teenagers, parents, and also a lecturer in a university in NUIG, and also now author. Yeah.
Hit us with the author bit first, then. Talk to us about your book.
So I've always wanted to write a book, and I thought that if I was going to write a book, then it's going to be around children, because that's really my area of most interest in children and parents. And also I suffered with anxiety when I was a child. So I thought I'd like to write a book to help the understanding between parents and children, because anxiety can be quite misunderstood at times. And so I called it Love In, Love Out, a compassionate approach to parenting your anxious child. So it's very much, I'm really into compassion focused therapy, which is an Eastern type of blend of therapies. And I thought it was a really nice way of using that approach and writing a book about it, really. So that was released in July, and it's done really well, and I'm really happy with what I've written. You know, that's kind of the most important thing. It's the little messages you get from people that say that it has changed something in their lives for the better.
It's that ripple in the pond, isn't it? That it still keeps going, and you know, those words are having an impact. That's quite something.
Yeah, it is. It's and the one thing I said at the end of the book is, you know, the most important thing, and I just kind of have it written here, is to every child and grown-up child who feels anxious out there, this one's for you. I've been there. It's really hard, and I'm holding your hand. I hope this book gives you a voice and does you justice. So that's really, like, at the end of the day, you know, even with, you know, obviously you're interested in sales and interested in it getting out there to as many people as possible. But really, for me, the most important thing is that maybe it has facilitated an understanding between parents and their children, and it has. And I think it still has legs. There's still a lot that can come from the book. But I'm really happy with it. And like, I wasn't sure about the cover initially. It wasn't me that actually picked it with this big scribble in the middle of it. But yeah, it turned out, I couldn't imagine it any other way. You know, and it has, like, the title of it came from a conversation that I had with a friend of mine. She actually had a baby the day after me, and I met her for the first time in the post-labor ward, and we became really good friends about 7 years ago when my second baby was born. And then we were just having a real hard morning chatting a few years later, and she just said that she uses this mantra, love in, love out, when she's having a shit hard parenting moment. So I just liked it, and I was looking around for titles. I would spend hours writing titles when I should have been writing the book. I'd be like imagining titles, you know. But then the publisher liked it, and that's how that came about.
That's a lovely way of putting it, I suppose. And just to break that down in terms of love in, love out, is that love inside yourself and bringing it back out as well? Is that the whole purpose of it?
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's a mantra. So a mantra is like a set of words that we use, or a phrase that help us in our lives. But it's also like a wave. I kind of see it as almost like a breath in, a breath out. It's like, it's quite rhythmic if you keep saying love in, love out. And I actually have a meditation in the book for grown-ups, really. But the whole idea is, if the parent focuses on pouring love into themselves, which includes reflecting on themselves as parents, and also reflecting on how their childhoods have affected the way they parent. And if the parent focuses on, you know, feeding their soothing circle is what I call it. So, trying to kind of soothe themselves using whatever methods they use, finding their potion, as I say, then they're in a much better place to be able to understand their children with anxiety and, kind of be with them in their feelings. But if a parent is full up and is really stressed out, then your child with anxiety, your anxious child is just going to be, chaos meets chaos. So the only way I felt, there weren't really many books out there that there were lots of books that looked at child anxiety, and how the techniques that parents should use. But there weren't many books that actually looked at how a parent feels in response to their child's anxiety and how they might address that and look at that first before they actually respond.
I mean, is the parent typically the origin of the problem as such? Are they typically the cause, or is that too generalistic?
It's hard. Like, anxiety is both like genetic and it can be environmental. So they say that about 15, so that's 15% of children are born with a more anxious temperament. And they can see that from looking at babies and how they react to, if they hold something up in their cots, how they react. There's about 15% of babies that will shy away from a stimulus like that. And later on, it has been shown that those very same children have a more anxious disposition as they get older. But then there's also life events that might contribute to a child having anxiety. Like, say, any type of trauma, or somebody dies that really meant a lot to them, or something big happened. Like, kids can be afraid of monsters and young kids, and then being separated from their parents, or they get anxious around going swimming or doing things that are performance based, and then when they're teenagers, maybe more social situations. But I do think one of the questions I will always ask a parent that comes into me is, does your child remind you of anybody that you know? Because usually there might be a parent who might be a little bit anxious. Now, whether they were anxious to begin with or as a result, I'm not saying a child's anxiety causes a parent's anxiety, but when you have an anxious child, say your child won't let you go, and they have separation anxiety, then obviously that's going to contribute to anxiety in the parent. But very often I do find that there is a certain level of anxiety in one of the parents, and this temperament could have been passed down genetically or else environmentally. But it's really important for parents to look at how they react and what that does for them in their bodies, even subconsciously, that we react to our children in ways that we're not even aware of. They're automatic responses. They're as automatic as crossing your arms. You always cross your arms in one way. But if I ask you to cross your arms the other way, then you're going to go, God, that actually feels really weird. So I suppose what I'm asking parents with this book to do is to cross their arms in another way, and to see like why they're crossing their arms the way they are and where that comes from, and then maybe reflect, and then they can kind of, so I have this thing called the SAFE chain of resilience, which breaks it down, like SAFE being the acronym. S is for self-care, A is for anchoring your child, F is for helping them to feel felt, and E is for the empowerment. So it kind of follows a kind of a trauma-based way of looking at the brain in a way, and how we kind of have to look at the child's fight or flight and calm them down before we can really empower them to help themselves with their anxiety. So yeah, I think it was quite a clear concept, Pete, before. It was a book proposal and quite a clear concept before I even started writing it. So it actually didn't divert all that much away from the original plan that I had.
And when did this plan come into place? I mean, has this been something that's been kicked around for a while, or?
No, it was it was probably like, so I helped a girl called Caroline Foran. She wrote a book on anxiety that was really did very well in Ireland. It was called Owning It, Your Bullshit Free Guide to Living with Anxiety, I think it was called. And I helped her. I like Brezzy got me, I'm sure you know Niall Breslin, or maybe yeah. So he got me in touch with Caroline, and I was helping her. I helped her with her book in terms of the science behind anxiety and also all the exercises that she used in her book. So then I got the want to write a book and to think that I might be able to. And then actually Brezzy got me in touch with his agent, who then told me what I should do in terms of writing a book proposal. And she just gave me 5 subtitles for, writing. And I ended up writing like a 25-page book proposal. But it was good in a way because it gave me a lot of, like, I did it over a 3-month period, but it gave me a lot of time to really think about exactly what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. And then it went to various publishers. And I think I spoke to 3 or 4 publishers about it. So, I mean, it was the most exciting thing to arrive in Dublin and to park up and to know that I was about to go into the National Museum and to meet publishers to talk about a book. And then it became this, like, 2 publishers wanted to sign me, and it became like a bidding thing between the 2 of them, which was mad because I also went through a kind of a trauma at the time where my little dog died, who I absolutely loved, and she died on my birthday, and she choked on a piece of meat that I had given her. And it was also that time of the snow 2 years ago in March where we had a lot of snow. And it was such a weird time, actually, because I was kind of like, on one hand, so delighted about getting a book deal, and on the other hand, in just really traumatized by what had happened with my dog. So it was just a very weird time. But I was meant to finish it within 6 months, but like there was no way I could write a book in 6 months, like when I have a full-time job and I have 2 kids. So it ended up that it took me a year, but then they had to delay it by a year because they said you should publish in April or May for this kind of book. And then, of course, it was delayed again because of COVID. So eventually came out in July after a long, it was 2.5 years from kind of from conception to birth, if you know what I mean.
That's like the gestation period of an elephant or something. It's like, it's like there's something ridiculously long. It's like,
I know.
It's
Oh God, my family were just so done with me and my book. It's just like my kids are like, my daughter, I have a 7 and a 9-year-old, and whenever my daughter was listening to me on the radio or whatever promoting my book, she'd be like, "Daddy, turn that down. Everybody knows this stuff already." She's just like, "This is just torture," So they were sick. They were just, they were tired. Like, I was coming in here. This is where I wrote it, right here, every night. Working all hours, my husband having to look after them during the weekend and all that. It was really hard, but it was, at the same time, I wouldn't turn people off doing it. It was a labor of love. That's all I can say, but it was certainly not easy at all,
I have to ask a very serious question, and knowing that drama, the dramatics in the children, where do they get it from? Is it from yourself or your husband?
I don't know. Do you think I'm dramatic?
I don't know. It's just I love the acting, the drama of having yourself on the radio again. I love it. But that's kids. That's awesome.
Yeah, they are dramatic. Like they're both into dramatic arts. My mother is. We're related to Maureen O'Hara, so there's definitely a drama end to the family. Yeah, definitely. I may be caught up on stage one day and actually do something. You never know. You never know.
Love it. Before we sort of really probably get into it, I suppose, what does fire in the belly mean to you?
For me, it means passion, and it means, for me, passion is really important. And when I think about passion, I think very much to the times that I would teach. So yesterday, say I was in NUIG lecturing these doctoral clinical psychology students, and the option was to do it online or to do it in person in a socially distanced way, wearing masks and all of that. And it was on the subject of infant mental health, which is the mental health of babies. And I want to do it in person, because even though like it was done in a safe way, but I wanted to do it in person because I just felt like the best way for me to impart my passion for this subject is to do it in person and to kind of bring the subject to life. So I do really like that teaching side of it, or the workshop learning side of it. And actually, you know, when I've had trainee psychologists with me, I would say to them, for me, the most important thing is that by the end of your 6 months with me, that you would consider working with children as being, even though you have the choice, you can work with adults, you can work with, you know, people in brain injury, older population, any different type of specialism clinical psychology has. But I hope that you really consider working with children, that I've kind of brought passion, or that my passion has somehow exuded from me and been contagious to them. That this is really like, I kind of feel fire in the belly is like, what the heck is the point in doing anything if you don't have fire in your belly? Like, that is how I feel. But equally, my fire in my belly can be a fiery personality that isn't always, I don't know, appreciated by, I don't know, by people, you know, or it mightn't always be like I have strong opinions about things. So I think when you have fire in your belly, there can be, it's about using it in a good, creative way that's helpful to people, but sometimes also honing it back, because you don't always get your message heard if you present it in a way that's too fiery, if you know what I mean. That's what it is to me. It's passion, you know?
It makes, and even we're sort of getting a glimpse of that, I suppose, in terms of when you have your subject, and that is you know, a real passionate end for you, and it makes so much sense. And my sort of telltale for a lot of people when you've hit their fire in the belly is the generally, they'll travel the extra mile, they'll want to do it in person, they'll just keep verbal diarrhea about it, they just keep talking, they just love it, they're passionate, and they really sort of live it and breathe it. I think
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Fill in the gaps for me, if you would, please, in terms of, or if you can give us a bit of background. Compassion focused therapy. What is that, if you don't mind me asking?
It's a therapy. So I was part of this documentary called Stressed about 2 years ago in, it was on RTE, and it was all about people that are very stressed. And they had 5 volunteers on the documentary, and they wanted me to work with a number of them. I ended up working with one of them who was based in Galway. And really, I was kind of thinking, what the heck strategies am I going to use for somebody who's very stressed in work? He had 2 jobs. He wanted to spend more time with family, but he had these jobs. And for him, he really had this belief in his head: if I don't make all this money, if I'm not working all the time, I'm not good enough. That was kind of the belief that he had. So there I got the Relaxation and Stress Handbook. And like, you see, I'm used to working more with children, adolescents. I do work with parents, but I haven't worked with adults in a therapeutic way, I suppose. I hadn't in quite a while. But then I got wind of this compassion focused therapy, and I had heard about it, and I had met somebody for coffee, a psychologist who was big into it. And she started talking about the main concepts in it. And I was just like, oh my God, that just totally resonates with everything that I believe and I think already. But it was just like she was giving me the structure for it. So the 3 main elements of it are mindfulness, which is about, being in the present moment, awareness of the present moment, on purpose and without judgment. So many people have difficult feelings, but they judge themselves for it. They might feel ashamed for feeling angry or whatever. So it's about kind of letting the feeling be, and then, it washes over you a lot quicker if you let it be, rather than try to push it away or be ashamed of it. So that's mindfulness. And the second element of it is common humanity, which is really relevant for our days of COVID, because it's this whole idea of we all struggle in life. Struggles are part of life, and it's happening in the whole world. We all have these feelings, and it helps us to feel less alone as human beings when we know, oh, this is what it feels like to feel grief as a human right now. Do you know? Because even though we have our personal stories and we all have our individual hurts and difficulties and joys, there's a lot of commonalities between us as well, and it helps. And then the third element of that is self-kindness, which is this idea of, if you actually you know, putting your hand over your heart and, you know, almost giving yourself a hug and saying to yourself, you know, I'm feeling sad at the moment, which is mindfulness, your awareness of your feeling. This is what it feels like to be sad as a human being, which is common humanity. And may I bring myself kindness to this sadness that I feel, you know, and to myself. Now, a lot of people have a difficulty with that, with being kind to themselves. And there's many reasons why. And very, very often that can come back to childhood reasons. But and then another major concept in compassion focused therapy is this idea of 3 emotional circles that we have. One of them is threat, one of them is drive, and one of them is soothing. So with that volunteer that I worked with on that stress documentary, his threat circle was really big. So threat is your fight or flight response. We all need to have a sense, you know, kind of threat circle because we need to protect ourselves, and we all have this kind of threat focused brain. At the moment, even the way we're looking at what if this happens with COVID, what if that happens, and really kind of, you know, humans have this ability to see into the future and to think about the past, which kind of inflates our feelings of threat. And when we're anxious and we're angry, that also is about threat. And drive is about what gets you up in the morning. It's your fire in your belly. That's what drive is. And this guy that I worked with, Jonathan, he doesn't mind me saying his name, was very driven, but his drive was coming from threat. His drive was coming from feeling not good enough. And then you've got soothing, and his soothing circle was really tiny. And soothing is all about what you do every day, your everyday practices in terms of being kind to yourself, but it's also about your connections and relationships with other people. So really, it's about looking at what is the balance of the 3 circles in your life. And can you somehow, people are afraid. Jonathan, for instance, was afraid to be kind to himself and to work on that in case he became lazy and he would just like sit around and just watch Netflix all day and drink beer or whatever. But actually, you can still be driven and soothed. And it's about finding that balance between the 3 circles. So for me, there's not much done on compassion focused therapy in children. So I was just like, this therapy is amazing. I've used it with teenagers. I've used it with kids. I've used it with adults. And so I'm going to use it in my book. So there you go. That's why I applied those principles in my book, because I felt like I want to bring parents on a journey of compassion. Like a friend of mine described my book, the same girl who came up with Love In, Love Out. She kind of said, Malie, your voice kind of comes through the book in terms of your voice as an anxious child, as a parent, as a psychologist. But it's kind of like she says, it was like a gift that I was giving out to people. And it was a lovely compliment, really, because that is kind of how I felt it was as well, you know. And hopefully people who read it, and I've had lots of really nice comments of people who kind of really see it as, you know, it's quite easy to read and quite personal in a way.
It is amazing, and I love that. And I'm just thinking as you were talking there, there's children, I don't know whether this is a myth or not, but children are born with, is it 2 fears? Is fear of falling and fear of loud noises? Is that right?
I haven't heard of that actually before.
Yeah, because I
But
don't know when.
these would be their primal reflex fears, probably.
I listen, you. So
Yeah,
I know
yeah,
enough to be dangerous.
yeah,
That's about it.
yeah,
Because I
yeah,
remember, I know with kids, they sort of almost they don't throw them obviously, but you know
yeah.
they sort of just let them drop and see if that reflex is there.
Yeah, and I guess, yeah, probably that's what, you know, they look at the reflexes of babies. And actually babies, it's really interesting that they're, when they hear a sound, they actually see the sound. So their senses haven't actually quite, really young babies haven't actually quite separated yet. So for them, that's why we kind of talk about the first few years of life as being really important, because parents might think, oh, well, you know, there was loads of rows in the house, but that's fine. And I'm not saying rows are not okay. I'm just saying, because I'm talking about good enough parenting, and there's rows in every house. But if a baby kind of hears enough loud noises over a period of time, and those loud noises are also associated maybe with less caregiving for themselves, if you know what I mean. So if there's rows going on all the time, and, you know, violence or whatever. And then they're also not being minded as well, they're not being attuned to as well, then that actually, you know, could impact on their developing brain. But obviously I don't want to scare people by saying that, but the early few, and parents sometimes mistakenly think, oh, well, they weren't conscious, they weren't talking, they don't tell me that that has upset them. But I have seen trauma in very early years impact on a child, say, who turns up at my clinic aged 5, 6 with really terrible separation anxiety. And I try to, in a very gentle way, maybe explain to the parent that there might be underlying issues that stem from very early on in their lives.
And when you talk about children, what sort of age range do you typically tend to sort of work with? And I suppose in the
Yeah.
book then as well, what's your definition of a child?
I suppose we're meant to work with kids from 0 to 18, and that's kind of my job in the health service. But you know, generally we only tend to see children from 2, maybe age 2 up, for kind of to look at their development. But for me, the reason I got really passionate, say, about infant mental health, and that's the mental health of babies, is that I felt like I'm not seeing babies. We should be seeing babies. 90% of their brain develops in the first 3 years of life. What is the point in seeing a child when they're 2 or 3 or further, if actually we know that a lot of crucial development is happening in those first few years? And it's not just about supporting babies, but it's about supporting the parents who have those babies, and really kind of getting them a good support network. Because having a baby, as you know, you've 3 kids, for a parent who's, you know, doesn't have too many issues and is reasonably well adjusted, it's like overnight your life just explodes. Do you know what I mean? Like, literally, it's nothing prepares you for that. It really doesn't. And maybe on your second or your third you kind of know a little bit more what to expect, but it's really hard. Like, it's to kind of let go of your old life. So for anybody who actually has issues on top of that, or any vulnerabilities, then that can be particularly difficult for them. And I that's why I became so interested in this area. And that's why I've kind of gone on to become part of an early years group. I've made posters to kind of with Galway Parent Network to promote the idea of infant mental health. I used that stress documentary. So they were filming, and then I said, guys, you know, it'd be really interesting to look at the early origins of stress. And they were like, yeah, okay, well, what do you have in mind? And I said, well, we have these posters that we've made in Galway. They're based on UNICEF messages, and it would be really great if we could hold a workshop for parents and talk about the posters, and you could film that, and then we could talk about the early stress response and why babies might be stressed and where that comes from. And so we did that. We actually got an RTE filming crew to come to a tiny family center in Galway and to film it, and that kind of felt very empowering. And that was all going on at around the same time that my book was about to begin, and my dog died, and all this stuff was going on at the same time. It was quite mad. But that's probably an area that I will possibly write a book on that in the future. I have other ideas as well, but it's definitely an area that I'm hugely passionate about, because not many people are familiar with that type of information.
Well, definitely. I know. I mean, I've, like I said, I have twin girls there, and they're not even 2. And
All right.
I mean, they're mini adults. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, if you sort of go, Ash, what do they know at 2? It's like they know a lot.
Yeah.
They know how to, you know, and there's compassion, there's energy. And I love that you brought up that statistics, that, you know, the common thing being, you know, all our sort of, what is it, our sort of core beliefs are formed by the age of 7. You know, Dr. Gabor Mate and a few
Oh
others
yeah.
talked about sort of up to the age of 3, that, you know, and I love you brought that up, you know, was it 90% of your brain development by the age of 3? That it makes total common sense, right? You know, and everything's stacked on thereafter, you
Yeah.
know, or enhancement of.
And it's not to say there's not hope afterwards, because I think sometimes parents, even me as a parent, I felt maybe with my second child that I probably was more stressed than I was with the first. And then there can be temperaments, that there's certain children with their parents that there's a kind of a temperament issue, or babies might have certain sensitivities to touch, and then the parent might feel rejected as a result. It's a very kind of dynamic interaction. And so what I'm saying to parents out there who are hearing this and thinking, oh my God, like I was depressed for the first few years, or this is what happened, and is it too late, and 90% is done, and I suppose I just want to say that that doesn't mean that there isn't plenty of opportunity for brain connections to continue to be formed as they grow older. And it's all about kind of, when, as Maya Angelou says, when I know better, I do better. And I think that's kind of what I want to do with my book, and what I want to do with my work, is to kind of plant a seed of, oh God, I haven't heard that before, but to do it in a really compassionate way. It's never done in a blaming way, because if I was to write, like I remember being handed a book, I won't even mention the name of the author, when I had my second baby, and it was all about like routines for babies. And the first chapter said you should have yourself and your toddler and your baby dressed and showered and dressed by 8 o'clock in the morning, and then you can continue with your routine. And I was just like, I flung the book across the room and I said, I'm sorry. Immediately I'm feeling like I'm not good enough, that I'm doing something wrong. People do not learn when they feel threatened, so there is no point in me kind of presenting the information in a threatening way. It is about really being understanding, and also sharing your journey. I don't mind sharing bits about me, because I don't want people to just think, oh, like she doesn't know what she's talking about. Like she's a psychologist and she's got a perfect home life and everything's grand. And sure, isn't it easy when you read all the books and all that kind of stuff? And that's not what I'm kind of about at all. Do you know what I mean? It's not. But of course I have to share in a way that's sensitive to my family as well,
What is your learning mechanism? Because you talked about being quite hands-on and going through it yourself, but then also the book side. I mean, are you naturally a reader, or you learn through the reading and the immersion process, or you do, or what's your go-to?
Oh God, when I was writing my book, it was a combination of, I would see clients, and as a client would be in with me, I'd be like, I'd be in that kind of zone where it's almost like, all I can think of is that, when you're trying to catch flies on this tape, and it was like my antenna was out for anything that was relevant to what I was writing or doing at the time. And I would hear things that clients would come out with, and I'd be like, God, that really kind of resonates. And I'd maybe write it down. But obviously I was going to convey that in a very anonymous way in the book. And I would do a mishmash of clients, so nobody could ever recognize their story. But there might be words that somebody had said, or an angle of something that somebody said. So very, very informed by my actual contact with clients. It could even be, and then also like, my method of learning is from my own personal experience, when I felt that, like, say I did a course called Circle of Security. It was a parenting course a few years ago. It was about me teaching. It was about me eventually running this course for parents who are in very difficult situations with their kids, some kids being in care and stuff like that, And when I was on the course, I remember the instructor said, this course is about, it will teach you how to run the course, but it'll also really kind of get you to reflect on your own experiences, whether you're a parent or not. If you're a parent, it'll get you to reflect on being a parent and how you parent. If you're not a parent, it'll get you to reflect on your childhood and stuff. So that really transformed my view of everything, honestly. Like, it just really, when I came home a different mom. I'm serious. Like, where before I was kind of losing it more and just really frustrated at times, and not as aware. I'm not saying I'm perfect now at all, but that all happened about 2 years ago as well, around that time that I was starting to write my book. And I just kind of became aware of my my daughter's needs a bit more, and that, you know, rather than being so black and white. I'll give you an example, like where she would say, like, her older sister would be crying about something in bed, and my youngest would be like, "Mommy," you know, she'd get out of bed, but I'd have put like 10 blankets on top of her. She still loves her cellular blankets, and then another blanket. And then she'd come out of bed and go, why is Jessica kind of crying? What's that about? And I'd be like hangry. I'd be hungry, angry, tired, you know, after a day of work. And I'm thinking, oh, I'm nearly off. It's nearly done, you know, this whole, and next thing she'd come out of bed and I'd be thinking of the millions of blankets I have to put back on her. And I'd shout and like be really angry, like from the core of my soul, kind of angry. And like, it would just screw everything up, because next thing she's upset, I'm not tending to her older sister's needs. You know, it takes another half an hour to calm the whole house. It's horrible. Then I feel guilty coming down the stairs. I'm like, oh God, why couldn't I just hold it together for another 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it took? I was so rigid. When we're rigid, you see, I've kind of really, you know, like, rigidity leads to problems, you know, and I can be quite rigid at times. But then when I came back from that course, I realized, you know, she just wants to connect. She's just wondering what her sister is what's going on with her sister. So same example, she comes out of bed. Yes, I know I have to put 10 million blankets back on her, but I just kind of bring her in and say, oh, you know, Jess is a bit upset. Something happened in school today. What do you think we should do for her, Amy? You know, what do you think might help her? And next thing, we're all sitting on the bed trying to help the older sister with this situation. And then, like, within 2 minutes, they're all back in bed. They're practically asleep. I go down the stairs. We've had a beautiful moment, and all because my reaction was different. And it, for me, that course taught me that you actually have a moment of awareness before you react with your kids. There is a moment of awareness. There is. So I know I'm kind of digressing from your question, but so I learn from my clients. I learn from courses that I do, and I really soak it in. And then I also learn from reading. I know you said reading mightn't be your thing, and from podcasts. I love listening to podcasts, and I love, I had so many notes around me. It wasn't reading books as much as I really like reading articles. You know, I see an article online and go, God, that looks really interesting. And then I'd read that. So for me, like, shorter articles as opposed to big, long books. But I really took from 2 books for my book. But yeah, I was kind of inundated with too much information. I was kind of glad that process was over when it was over. It was too much. And if I was to write another book, I wouldn't probably take as much information in, because it was kind of overwhelming. It was kind of a bit an ADHD type of, like, you know, it was coming in from all sources. And I was kind of like, how the heck am I going to write this now? How is this going to come? How is this going to pour out? You know, I think I tried to do this perfectionistic way of writing a book. And really, now that I know that only 70,000 words was used out of 120, I think I'd be a lot more economical if I ever did it again. But so I use various sources of learning, to be honest, Pete.
Well, I think it's great, and you know, it's obviously, well, it's coming across certainly that it was a journey for you anyway. It was a journey of discovery. It was a learning, elongated because of, obviously, from the moment of conception right through to that process. And I'm kind of wondering, from a publisher's point of view, is that why they sort of try and cap out at 6 months? Is that to just stop it from growing legs and turning into a 14-part trilogy? Is there a method to the madness, do you think?
I don't know. I think they probably want to keep authors on track in terms of timings, but then I think that 6-month deadline is much more for somebody who isn't working full time, you know, isn't seeing clients full time. It doesn't have another job as their main job, you know. So I think that's probably, I think for anybody who's working full time, a year is a more reasonable kind of but still, I think if I did it again, I wouldn't spend as long at it. I wouldn't put as much into it, because I think sometimes when you put everything into something and then you might have expectations of oh, I poured everything in there, and maybe it's okay to keep things back. But I did keep things back because they were naturally cut out. And I still think that there's material there for some other project in the future, for sure. There's no doubt.
How did it relate to you then in your own journey? I mean, what was sort of the similarities, if you like?
In what way?
Well, I suppose, I mean, the anxiety you mentioned earlier,
Oh, yeah.
that's a sort of a trait that you found in yourself. Do you know where that came from?
Um, there was lots of, I think there was lots of reasons. Maybe I was one of those 15% of kids born with an anxious temperament, and like we were moving around a lot. My dad is a diplomat. My dad's Dutch, my mother's Irish. We moved to lots of different countries. So probably not many supports, family supports, or, having to introduce yourself every 2 to 4 years in a new school all over again. I think I went to about 8 or 9 different schools. And I guess my parents had kind of like, their relationship, they eventually split up, but there were difficulties at times. And I think I was one of those people that I'm one of these people that just kind of carries the weight of the world on my shoulders, so but that's not a bad thing. I think an anxious child, and I kind of talk in my book about the superpowers of anxious children, anxious kids, like they're quite sensitive in a way, and it means that they might make really good caregivers in the future. Whatever it was, I knew that I was going to be a caregiver because that's the role that I had in my family. I was the youngest of 3. My brother and sister used to fight a good bit, and I tried to kind of mediate between them. I do it between my parents. I always felt like it's my job to help. It is my job to help. So it's no surprise that I became a helper, because I always felt like it was my job. But maybe as I got older, I learned that you don't have to bring the stuff home with you. Do you know what I mean? You kind of have to learn the boundary, that if it's your job. But it's hard. I even find the boundary even harder now, because I kind of, I because I'm doing the media stuff as well. I do get an awful lot of queries. People email me an awful lot. And sometimes I invite that, because I do these Facebook lives with the Lust for Life special broadcasts for parents. And I invite people to write me queries that I will answer on Facebook Live. But I get a lot of emails for, can you help me? I know you don't see people privately, but who should I go to? Or, it can be, I'm not very good with boundaries. I have to learn that better, to be honest. But yeah, that's where the anxiety came from. And then when I was a teenager, I had a bout of anorexia, which can be very kind of black and white anxiety related too. So that only went on for about a year, but it was kind of tough. So I have had my ups and downs as well. So I'm not coming at it with no experience of it, but I really felt that my anxiety wasn't understood. But I had stomach aches, and I was given these placebo drugs for them. But maybe it wasn't understood as much as it is now. But for me, my anxiety felt really real. It felt, my stomach did hurt. It wasn't that I needed fake drugs. I probably needed, or are you okay, a kind of acknowledgement. But I don't blame my parents at all, because we were moving around a lot and very busy, and I guess there was stuff going on in their lives, and they may not have understood that it was anxiety. So it's not a blame game. So in a way, writing the book was probably healing, because I know that there's bits in there that address those issues that'll help parents to kind of understand. It's like as I said, giving a voice to the child.
That's interesting. I mean, and was there an element then of the sort of inner child work with yourself and working through that and all? Is that what you're working at anyway? And is that what you're working at with yourself?
Well, it's funny you say that, Pete, because one of the directions I want to go next, and I know this sounds crazy, but I want to do stuff that's like, I recently did workshops for the Galway Recovery College, and that's a college that it's brilliant. It's a model that's all about helping people with mental health issues of all different degrees, by the way, not just mild, but moderate, severe. You've got people with schizophrenia, people with, severe depression, personality disorders, all of that, joining in and learning. And I did a self-care and self-compassion workshop. And it wasn't just focused. A lot of them weren't parents, some of them were, some of them weren't. It was done on Zoom for 3 sessions. And I just found that incredible. Like it was voluntary kind of work. And I remember thinking like, why, this is like taking like 3 hours of 3 Wednesday nights in a row after work, and it's really tiring and all that. But when I did it, I was just like, oh my God, like, there was this one guy that said, I didn't know I could do stuff for myself. I thought doing stuff for yourself is selfish. I didn't know that it's important for your mental health to do stuff for yourself. And then there was a woman there who said that she had bought herself a baby doll. She's in her like 50s, but she bought herself a baby doll for the first time when she was in her 40s, because she was never bought a baby doll when she was a baby. And I just kind of like, for me, that suddenly kind of went, oh my God, like there's a lot of people out there that, could really benefit from this stuff that I want to share, compassion focused therapy, that may not be parents and that may not have a child with anxiety. So how am I going to reach those people? Do you know what I mean? And I know there's plenty of authors and there's plenty of amazing people out there that can reach people, but I can only think of myself. So I was thinking maybe I would go down the road of, I started like researching reparenting with compassion, and these books that talk about your inner child and how to connect with yourself again, how to, as Matt would say, this guy called Matt Burke from the Magic Minds podcast, and he talks about minding your little self. And for people who have a difficulty with self-soothing and self-kindness, it usually stems from a difficulty in their childhood or a trauma maybe later on. And it's about kind of, one of the techniques we use in compassion focused therapy is, if your best friend came to you with the issue you have right now and said, I'm really struggling, I don't know what to do, like I feel really lonely, I don't know what to do. And if your best friend were to say that to you, what would you say? And then you get them to kind of talk that out, be it a client or be it a person attending a workshop or whatever. And very often we can be nicer to other people, to our best friends or to a friend, than we can be to ourselves, and we have this real critical voice inside our heads, and we all have it. Some of us more than others. And then Matt Burke talks about minding your little self, which is this idea of before the world got on top of you, before, you had your wound as a child or as a teenager or as an adult, before stuff came on top of you, before shit happened, basically, how would you have minded the little part of you? How would you have minded that little self? And I think that's really important. And one person that I interviewed, actually, her name was Hannah Lilly. I did this Parenting with Compassion podcast during the summer for a few weeks. I'm a bit like all over the place with what I want to do next, but she talked about having a photo of herself as a child on a swing. And she's had a lot of trauma happen to her since, but she puts this photo of herself as a child next to her sink that she can look at every day when she's washing the dishes, and remind herself of the little Hannah that she wants to reconnect with. And I definitely think there's something there. And I have done, I've been to counseling many times, and I've done a lot of work on connecting with that 9-year-old me who was in a room feeling really, really anxious and alone, and kind of really actually going back into that room. And it's something that I kind of want to do. So even today, like I was in the hairdressers, and because we're in lockdown come tomorrow, but this woman says to me, but your book is for parents, right, of anxious kids, and I said, but there is a lot in there that would help you too, because she's not a parent and she doesn't have an anxious kid. So I'm kind of thinking maybe there's a way of like imparting that information a bit more widely, and maybe that's my next project. I don't know, but there's definitely something that really is catching me about that inner child stuff. And I don't know, I'm probably going to start listening to more podcasts, reading more articles, immersing myself in there. I just feel like there's so much I want to do, and there's so little time to do it. That's how I feel. I don't know. You probably feel the same way.
Yeah, But I'm curious about your statement, saying you don't know, but what comes across is you do know.
Mm,
Do you know what I mean? You've actually literally written the book on it as such, and you have the title and everything else that goes with, and it's that. I'm going to circle back a bit further, if you don't mind, and because you described yourself in as a child on the caring role. I think that was
mm,
the word you used, and I'm kind of wondering is was it more than that? Was it sort of a pleaser slash peacekeeper role? Was it a bit more than caring with compassion? Was it a
mm.
what was it, a
Yeah.
peacekeeping?
Yeah, it probably was. God, I feel like this is a counseling session now. It probably was a pleasing, like if I do good, then I am good. Do you know what I mean? If I do good, I'm good. It's kind of, I am like that even now, where I feel like if I'm not acknowledged for work that I've done in work, that if somebody doesn't say, well done, or, like that, I feel like, oh, that wasn't good enough. That
Mm,
wasn't good enough. Do you know what I
mm,
mean? So I definitely, there is that kind of people pleasing side of it. And that's why I probably find it hard to say no as well. It's kind of like this, well, they think I should do it, then I should do it, and that discomfort of kind of being assertive or and not knowing, feeling like I don't know. I don't know what I want. Do you know what I mean? I don't know what I want to do next. There's so many things I'd like to do, but I just don't know. I don't know. But maybe I do know. I'm such a mess.
it's I find the whole concept and I suppose because myself, I literally was 41 this year, and so for me, big life events and
Yeah.
37 and a half was my what I call my midlife opportunity. It's like,
Mm,
listen, midlife crisis, call it whatever you want. I don't mind. I can go to the shop in my slippers, but it's kind of when, for me, and I suppose, and that's all I can talk about is, you know, that you start, there's the true you, your inner child, and it's just always there, your core beliefs, etc., etc. And then, but everything else that's sort of stacked up on top of that, years and years and years and years of stuff until it gets so wobbly that actually the
mm,
gap has to shut close. And you come back and all your value, because you're so far off yourself, you're going, I'm 37 and a half and I'm doing this and what the hell is this? And I've got a couple of kids and this, and you don't know whether you're coming left, right, or center or what's going on. And then a couple of life events until for me, I had sort of equivalent to, depression, isolation, breakdown, the whole
wow.
works, and until you eventually go, I just got to be me. I haven't the energy to carry that other person that was pleaser, everything. I was critic, pleaser, everything on top of everything else. I was, who you are for your parents, who you are for this, who you are for them, who you're, the pay rise, you're in for the corporate environment, etc. Until you eventually go, I don't know. Ah,
Yeah. It's hard though to find yourself though. Like I wonder, if you have a breakdown, it kind of makes you kind of it almost peels you back and you have to kind of emerge in a way as finding who you are perhaps because you have to survive. I wonder, is that kind of um was that the case for you?
it was. And what I'm struck at is how close depression and meditation are in terms of a physical act. Both their isolation, both their
Mm,
quietness, both are that. One's very positive, one's very negative. But as you say, it's it's having the bravery to just go, okay, because I'm generally not one for silence, or I wasn't, and you are in the career ladder and you're doing this and so many opinions and what ifs, and it just builds up and up and up and up and up until you eventually just get, I think you just get tired. I mean, I
mm,
literally have a tooth missing from, kids, stress, stuff, lack of sleep, as you say. I mean, well, for myself and my wife, we had to sort of more or less say, listen, we love each other, but we can't have a conversation about parenting after 9 o'clock at night because it escalated.
yeah.
It's like you looked at me funny.
Mm,
It's
I
like,
know.
but that's the thing. You take two rational, educated people, and you kind of, Jesus, it's like we were in a dark place there. But that's lack of sleep. That's everything. But
Yeah.
answering your question, I think I can only ask for me. I think coming back to my true self, and I'm really sort of, not compassionate when you were talking about that, is saying, how do I actually feel? You know, how do
Mm.
I, okay, you know, I tried that and I noticed I didn't finish that wee job. And rather than the inner critic used to, or as I look at it, is the chimp or the ego jumps in and goes, yeah, look at you, you failure, this, that, and the other. It's going, hold on a minute, just, I didn't finish that task. Why did I not finish that task? It's like, actually, maybe it's not for me. Maybe it's not
Mm.
bringing me love or joy. It just isn't. That's fine,
Yeah.
you know? And that's, like say, for me, the sort of dyslexia diagnosis or label, whatever way you want to look at it, that was so freeing. For
Mm.
years, I beat
Must have been.
myself up and everything. But it's not, I think it's no different to everyone. You know, people, you know, you do your careers, and why'd you do that? Because my math teacher at school said I was really good at this, or do you know what I mean? Or daddy said this, or
But I think it puts a whole new frame of understanding. Like, I mean, I work with kids, and I work with kids who I would, you know, I did my doctorate on ADHD, and you know, I would work with kids and do IQ tests, and you know, suggest dyslexia or reading disorder, and um, you know, I guess like knowing a diagnosis can really help a child and somebody much more so even later on to kind of put context on why did I have it. It now makes sense. No wonder, as they say in compassion focused therapy, this is one of their biggest things, is no wonder you had those difficulties. No wonder, you know, like no wonder you have two-year-old twins. There was all this stuff going on. You had this going on, and then you had this, you know, difficulty on top of it. And no wonder, you know, it's kind of a real like an understanding of that. Do you know what I mean? It's an understanding of where, because we all live in our context, you know, and I think that's really important for us to understand. That's why I want to find out more about people when I meet them, and find out what's important for them, and why, you know, somebody could say my granny died, but sure, that doesn't really meant a lot to me. She meant the world to me. When my mother wasn't there, my granny, and then suddenly it's like, oh my God, that's really important to you. Whereas to somebody else, they might say, my granny died. I didn't really know her. You know, it's so like context dependent, everything is.
hmm.
But one thing you mentioned there about, I found it really interesting about when you said isolation, like, you know, the depression and the meditation. What, tell me more about that. I'm just really interested for research purposes.
It's the super inner child, because that's what I've already written down, you know, for a title for you. But no, I think so. Meditation, I mean, they talk about quietness, you know, taking away external stimulation, you know, sort of quietening the mind, quietening, you know, and that. So when you look at it, so you know, meditating, people sit and they go away. And I only know for me in terms of do you remember the statue of the thinking man? There was
Like
one, and it was sort
this.
of, yeah, it was sort of pretty much, you know, and that could be really positive, really negative. I sort of saw that that was sort of my negative version of me, but that was what depression was. I shut the doors, closed it in, you know, but it's actually starting to close out the noise, you know, and you kind of go, but one is quite negative, but no different to, I kind of run this theory that
Mm,
you can't actually kill yourself by holding your breath. You know, where the body eventually snaps in and kind of going, nice try. I've just basically, we've just overridden you by fainting on the floor. So the conscious stops, you know, messing about holding your breath and is kind of going, and breathe again, you know, and I sort of run that theory that actually with depression, the brain actually goes into going, right, we need to just quieten the noise, do all that. The same process with actually meditation, kind of going, we need to quieten the mind, we need to isolate, we need to do this, you know, and then is it any coincidence then people going, where do your best ideas come from? Out having a walk,
mm.
close to water,
On holidays.
or in the shower.
Yeah.
You kind of go on, this is really interesting. It's not when I'm super busy at work or I'm multitasking with 50 things or whatever else that, you know, superhumans are doing. It's like, well, you feed the super inner child, you give them the voice, you hear them, and you hear, you know, you do all that. And suddenly it's like, okay, wow, that's, I haven't heard from you in a while. This is interesting,
Mm,
you know, and not without the sort of chimp coming in and going, quieten down, you've got work to do, and you know, you've got lectures or you've got bonuses or whatever it is, do you know what I mean? And life. It's
yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question. I want
No, it
to.
does. It does. It does. And it kind of just makes me think that I don't know. I don't, if you were to ask me like who is my inner child, who is I actually don't really, like, I've talked about it in counseling very often when I'm in counseling, you know, I've gone from topic to topic. I think I've dealt now at this stage with stuff that happened in childhood. I'm in a good place with that. I'm in a good relationship with my parents. My parents have a good relationship together. It's great, you know, and you know, but just in terms of I kind of describe myself as quite a like quite an anomaly in like quite like uh controlled in ways, very much like, you know, I mean, you know, obviously I had to do a bachelor's, a master's, a doctorate, you know, it was kind of like that's how things went. And then it was about achievement and, you know, you have to keep going and all of that. And then on another side of me is really like, and that's what maybe writing brought out is the creative side, and maybe, you know, starting to do like podcasts and things like that. It's just like the more creative side, but there's a wild side there for sure as well, a real kind of mad, like, you know, have fun type of side that really is great because I get to lose myself in that. So I have friends that are mad, that bring out that mad side, and I'm just like, ooh, this is great, you know. So it's kind of hard. It's hard to, it's, I don't know, maybe I should do more work on that. I don't know, but it's hard to marry those sides of yourself, you know, at times, and to know, you know, when you become a parent, you kind of lose some of yourself. I'm sure you find that yourself. You kind of lose, like, you know, I can't go out anyway, so it's, you know, who's that part of me. And you know, but there's definitely a side that still wants to please, please, and that also has an issue and difficulty with that idea of like staying still, being still. And like I have found the last few weeks that I'm absolutely wrecked from 9 o'clock at night. I'm fucked. And I'm like, well, how did I ever write a book? Like how did I ever do that? You know, I'm so tired in the evening. So I don't know. I like, I know I keep saying I don't know, but it's interesting. You know, I think, and isolation is something you said to me there that really interested me, because you know, that same girl today who I was speaking to about, you know, she was asking me about my book. She said, you know, there aren't many books out there written on isolation and the isolation that people feel. And obviously she's talking about it in relation to COVID, but just generally isolation, and how, you know, we talk about depression, we talk about anxiety, we talk about grief, but you know, a lot of people feel isolated now, but they do anyway. And I know we, you know, that, and loneliness, that people even in relationship can feel lonely. And we can all feel lonely sometimes, even if there's loads of people around us or there's nobody around us. And you know, it's and sometimes we want to feel lonely. It's not that we want to feel lonely, but we don't necessarily want to be around people either. Do you know? Sometimes that's not healthy for us either. So maybe it's about choosing when it's the right time or not the right time to be with people, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I think for me previously, I would have said, you know, depression, and I've listen, I have different views on that now. But you know, ironically for me, I realized that depression is it's a symptom, not a cause. You don't catch depression; it's a trigger from something else. That's roughly what I've put it down to. You know, two dead parents and two sets of depression. Wow, you know, it doesn't take a whole lot of rocket science, but actually, it also wasn't triggered by that. But to finish your point, or to come back on that, I suppose it's, you know, for me, I would, and with depression or the likes of that, or the needing to silence the mind, you know, it's for me the expression "lonely in a crowd." You know, that was so true, and I think that's almost where the brain going, listen, I can't take any more output or sort of input. You know, I need to either be outputting, or I need to still, I need to close the doors, I need to go away. um you know, I think it's almost like a hibernation effect, or what the body does, you know.
Yeah, it's happened to me, I'll be honest, a few times, where maybe twice in my work life over the last few years, I have literally been so stressed at work, you know, with the amount of referrals coming in, and that I have to manage them all, and that I feel this huge sense of responsibility. And every time somebody rings me, I find it hard to say no. And oh my God, and all the paperwork and all of the, I just kind of have found that there have been maybe 2 times where I have literally almost like, I wouldn't say I had a nervous breakdown, but I literally was so stressed that I just had to take weeks. I think I took a month off work once. I think I took 2 weeks, then I went back for a week and I just couldn't. And I went back, I left for another few weeks. So I just had to. And like immediately when I was at home and not thinking about work and, you know, able to just do simple things like cook and I don't know, even the lockdown, I found that there was a quality of, um, you know, of stillness. I just remember even like during the first lockdown, we'll be talking about the second and the third or whatever, but I really found that there was one day when I was like baking with the kids or going to bake or whatever. And I was like, you know what? They're watching telly right now, but I need to get these ingredients out for making the baking. But I'm not, usually I rush through that and try to kind of get the stuff ready as quick as I can so we can start. But I was just like, just going to take my time doing this because, you know, we've got all day and we can only go within 2 kilometers and, you know, might as well take my time doing this. And I'm enjoying my cup of tea. And it was just like, I actually slowed down on purpose and I never do that. And it felt really like it almost felt like that sensation that I feel when I take off when I'm in bare feet on grass and it's sunny. I remember a moment when I was in New Orleans, they call it over there, and I was pregnant with my first baby and it was warm outside. We were at a jazz festival. I was walking around barefoot. I was wearing this hippie type of dress. And I've actually spoken about that in counseling and I had hoop earrings and my hair was up. And I remember thinking, and I had this baby bump and I just felt so like that was me. Do you know what I mean? That was me. The kind of strip away the shoes, strip away the kind of the professionalism, that it was like me at my most natural. It was almost like I kind of thought, had I been a gypsy woman in a previous life, or where was that coming from? There was a real kind of naturalness to it that, you know, that I kind of, you know, that there's definitely something in that for me that I can't quite put my finger on, but there's something there.
When you say that was me, I mean, are you talking about you being the child or you being the
I don't
person?
know, just me
Mm,
being free of all of the constraints of work and emails and people wanting stuff. People are constantly want stuff.
mm.
People always want something. You know what I mean? It's constantly. It's like I want, I need, I want. You know, it's constant. And when it's with people's lives, it's not just I want. You know, it's people's lives. You know, they're like, you know, when people contact you and say, or else you get a referral and it's something really serious, it's really hard not to kind of go, oh my God, I know I have the power to be able to do something here, and the ability and the skills, and you know, what if I can't get to them and what happens then? Do you know what I mean? That's the stress, and that's the kind of like, you know I try not to take it home, but it does, there is an accumulated stress of being a carer for other people that really that takes hold, and that I enjoyed the lockdown, I suppose, for that reason. I was still working, but there was more calm in it all, you know.
Do you like yourself? Do you love yourself?
Jesus. um do I God, I'm gonna get upset here even think, I guess so, yeah. I get like, it's hard for me to see myself without kind of looking at achievements, or do you know what I mean? It's like I immediately get to that. I go, well, you know, I always wanted to write a book and I wrote a book, so therefore I must do. But no, like my most important roles in my life are the ones that are my relationships with people. And, I know that my kids, absolutely adore me and I adore them. And, and my husband, we have a good relationship, and I have some really, really, not loads, but a close set of friends that I absolutely love, and that do, love me. And I know I'm talking about other people, and I'm not talking about, do I, I find it hard to answer that question. I know that's really, maybe that's strange, but I suppose I do. I know I'm a good person. I know I have a good heart. So yeah, that's kind of as much that I can answer that, really.
What are you most proud of?
Having two beautiful children, like as in beautiful inside and out, what I mean by that. Yeah, just, creating, nurturing, being there for these two little souls that are so dependent, and, they're like sponges, and just kind of nurturing those relationships with them, and becoming, starting to develop relationships with them as they get older. You really get to know them, and it's beautiful, that relationship. It is. And I am proud of, like, the fact that I can be a good friend to people, and that I am loyal, and I can be, that, like, I can be counted on, and then I also feel that I am approachable to people. Maybe that's where it can be difficult with the overwhelm of emails and requests and this, that, and the other. But I do feel like I have imparted, by sharing, I have helped people in my life. I have helped either my clients or people out there who I haven't met or whatever, that I have actually helped people, that in my role I have. So, but probably being a mom, if I hadn't become a mom, I think that would have been, like, probably one of the biggest losses for me. I knew that I really, like, it was something that I had to absolutely do. And it has, like, parenting has kind of taught me so much, even just about myself. So yeah, probably the being the parent part of me.
Isn't it? I mean, it's great. It's beautiful, and I suppose I'm sort of the synchronicity, I suppose, of your daughters. I think you're saying it's 9 and 7. And that was a very, it was a time you picked up 9 years of age of being, sort of a moment you sort of regress back to, and is there do you think there's almost a synchronicity there?
Yeah, I mean, I guess when, being 9 is very difficult age. I mean, there is an article out there called Parenting the 9-Year-Old Child, and being 9 is hard because you start to become, there's a lot of brain development going on. We also start to become much more aware of peers and feelings like embarrassment, and there's a lot of complexity. Things are no longer black and white. Things are shades of gray, and you realize your parents are fallible as well, and all of that. And you go through, like, as a girl, there's a lot of, I have 2 girls, and there's a lot of, like, different, like, squabbles that can happen in school, and things that seem really huge at the time. And so when I sat on the couch, for instance, with my daughter tonight, and she was upset over something, I I suppose I consciously, even though, like, I probably, I'm thinking, oh, I should have come home earlier, and I shouldn't have been in work so late, and I should have done this, and I should have done that, but I consciously sat with her and kind of told her that I understood how she felt, and that when I was 9, I felt those feelings too. And I still feel those feelings sometimes, and that it's okay to feel them, rather than, say, oh, you shouldn't, that there's no reason for you to be embarrassed for that or whatever. It's just like, no, it's just kind of like talking about the feeling of embarrassment even, and how that tends to crop up around that age, and that it's okay to feel like that. And I think just being still, like, I just put my arms around her and I thought, actually, I don't need to even say that much. Sometimes just being still and saying nothing, because sometimes when you talk, you end up kind of realizing that you're digging yourself a hole, or you're trying to justify something, or you're trying to make the situation better, whereas actually just a hug by itself and breathing with that is just enough. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And it's funny you say that, because I had someone saying to me today, it's like, just there's no words.
Yeah,
You can try, and that's the thing. It becomes clumsy when you try and attach a word to it, and it's perception and everything else. You just go, yeah, it is.
it
That's it.
is. Yeah.
It's when you were talking about working with people there, I was quite interested. Do you would you describe yourself as intuitive? Does that come into play, or empathic? What in terms of seeing what's going on? Are you sensing what's going on, or what's your primary powers there?
I feel people, like I really feel them. I feel them. And that's probably why I sometimes, somebody might leave a session and I literally feel absolutely drained. Um, so when people have high emotion and they come in, I just really feel it from them. I really, when somebody tells a story, I feel it. And it's like, oh, it's great to feel it. It's a very useful thing, obviously, to have, because it helps with being able to reflect back and be empathic, and to kind of know the nuances of the story, and that it's not just about the words, it's about how they express it. And I've been tearful in sessions before with clients. Obviously it's not about my tears. If I'm tearful, I'll quickly wipe my eye, but it's okay to show emotion as well. But I do, for me, like, I'm quite an emotional person, and I really like, and I know my mom is like that as well. We just feel things, and yeah, it's probably, yeah, there's an intuition, there's a feeling, there's something to do with warmth. It kind of centers around my belly, and it's harder to do now because a lot of my sessions are on the phone. So because I still don't have a webcam that works in work, so you can't do the same kind of work. So last week I just went for a walk with a teenager, through the forest nearby, like I know him well, and I just thought, like, I'm just gonna go for a walk, because like it's too hard. Like it's very hard to do that therapy stuff on the phone, so it's probably easier to do it face to face like this. But yeah, I feel people, and that's probably where the drainage can come as well. But it's not that I'm always feeling people. It's certain people catch me more than others. I don't know what it is. When there's a really amazing, like, not an amazing, when somebody comes in and tells a story and they bring you through it second by second, like, even when I listen to a podcast, or when I turn on the radio and there's a personal story, I'm just like, I'm with them. I'm with them in the story. I'm with you right now. I'm going through the ups, I'm going through the downs, and it's about the free flow and letting somebody flow with their story. It's really important, I think.
And do you get that? Do you get a chance to sort of flow in your own story? Is that, I don't know, with what you do you have to decompress? Is there a process on the other side?
Yeah, I mean, you're like, I go to my own counseling. I haven't now been since March. I had an online session, but it's really good that I can contact my counselor anytime I want. I don't know if she's back seeing people face to face, probably not now, but I know that she's at the drop of a text. She will see me, or we'll see each other online, and I don't have to tell my story again. And I feel such a sense of kind of kindness, compassion. Just, we talk about these things about, I've really started working on myself with her, rather than dealing with my past anymore, dealing with events that happened with siblings and different things that have happened in the last few years. It was more like, okay, now I'm starting to work on me. And funny enough, I've stopped that. So, and then in terms of my work, you have a supervisor when you work, a clinical supervisor that you can talk through certain cases with. but it's like once a month, and I might get to talk through 2 cases because the rest of it is to do with administrative stuff or whatever stuff we're doing. So I know I don't really get like free flow time talking about the impact of people on me, really. I don't really get that an awful lot of that. But so I do a lot of, like, I do go for runs, I go for walks. I probably, sometimes even before I get in the door, I will park near where I live and just go for a walk or a run, so that when I come into the kids, I come in decompressed, so it doesn't have to be talking that I do. Sometimes I just feel like I have a tremendous amount of energy in me and I have to let it out, because if I don't, I'll just explode,
I think it's, having, as you say, whether it be that empathic energy or whatever, that flow state that, it is creative energy, whatever's building up, that it has to come out, and that's why I was, the curious, the book, that sort of massive flowing process that it's very cathartic. It's getting it out there, it's awesome. I mean, do you have any concept of what you're capable of? Does that come into your...
Jesus, what a question. Do I have any concept? I kind of feel like I'd be capable of so much more if I wasn't a parent. Do you know that kind of way? Like, becoming a parent has helped me to understand the strife of parents, and what the hell would I be doing writing a parenting book without being a parent? Seriously, I had no idea, right? So I was a child psychologist who had no idea because I wasn't a parent, pretty much. Not to say you have no idea when you're not a parent, but you have more of an idea when you're a parent. But so the reason I'm saying that, Pete, is because, and I'm sure time is an issue when you are a parent, and it's like you could be in the free flow of really wanting, like, I started kind of sectioning off parts of my book that I didn't use to put into that reparenting yourself with compassion. Did this on my own for half an hour last night, got joy out of it, and I'm like, when will I ever get time to look at that? Like, I'd have to be motivated, I'd have to be like, I'd almost need somebody breathing down my neck with a deadline, or a publisher saying, you have to get that done, and I just, what am I capable of? I think I'm capable of a lot if I had the time, maybe. If I was able to focus a little bit more. At the moment, I just feel like I'm floating. I don't have I have so many different ideas in a way. Well, not so many. I have like 4 or 5 different ideas, and it's hard to know what I should do next with those ideas. How will I be of most service to people? How will I be of most service to myself? What do I need to focus on? I don't, I probably need a coaching session or something. I don't know. It's, I think I'm capable of a lot. I do. I do. I just don't quite know how much. And then whenever I think of that capability, I also think of the balance that, people who maybe meet their life's potential, there'll always be a kind of a cost to it. The cost being your children, time with your kids. That's how I see it. Do you know what I mean? I do see it that way. Yes, whilst my kids might be proud of their mummy having written a book, and their mummy on the radio, or their mummy on TV, or their mummy, whatever, psychologist, Dr. Malie Coyne, whoever they hear me as, but the end of the day, they just want their mummy. You know what I mean? So they want their mummy. So what am I doing fulfilling my own kind of individual, aspirations, maybe when they're older and I have more time on my hands. But at the moment, I feel if I follow everything I want to do and my potential, then there's going to be a cost, and a cost to my kids, a cost to my husband, to our relationship, to lots of different things, a cost even to my health. I have to think of that. So that's kind of, it's trying to balance those things. But you kind of looked at me weird when I said, like, when I talked about the cost, and I'm just wondering, you're a dad and you obviously have a lot of ambitions. Like, I ask you the question back, what do you think you're capable of? And do you feel there's a cost?
What am I capable of? It's a huge amount, and I am only starting to actually get a sense of it. It's not often I would sort of share this, but in the last 3 to 6 months, I've kind of found myself getting not spirit. It's a form of spirituality. It's pushing into another level of intuition. But serious immersion into this. I'm pushing myself. That's the thing, because people say, oh, it's selfish and all that. But listen, I pick up my kids, I drop my kids off. That's non-negotiable now. But I get up, I'm on reading groups at 5 o'clock in the morning,
Wow.
5:30. We'll put out 4 or 5 interviews a day, but then there's certain times there's no go. And but I'm finding that immersion process is in terms of finding myself and going through. I'm now sitting back and it's almost like, get me some popcorn. I don't know what I'm going to say next. It's so freeing. It's but it took there's an expression that's sort of been kicking around in my head for quite some time now. And and as you say, you suddenly hear certain things. As you say, it could be something someone said is going, that's brilliant, and that's exactly what I needed to hear at this time for that part of the book that I was writing or whatever. But there's an expression, from great overwhelm comes great change.
Right.
And there's no
Wow.
doubt for me that sort of 3.5 years ago, that was great overwhelm. And that's a common thread I hear. I'm saying to people, what happened? Why is it now that, they said, yeah, listen, if you had met me a year ago, if you'd met me 5 years ago, listen, you would see someone completely different. But I bottomed out. I got to the point when I could no longer carry the baggage. Could be alcohol, could be any number of 50 things that someone gets to until they just go, I can't carry it anymore. I can't have the energy, the drive to just being who I am. And I have a slight fascination with near-death experiences in that people let go of everything from the past because it's almost like, again, it's sort of unintentionally getting about spiritual, and there's Dying to Be Made. There's a lady it'll come back to me, but talks about and did a TED talk and all about near-death experience, but she was saying the enlightenment and the awakening and everything else of just going, nope, that stuff I was worried about doesn't have a concept. It doesn't matter.
Wow.
And weirdly, there was, again, you just hear so many different stories. But there was a lady I spoke to, and she was abused when she was 7. So, but told nobody for a further 7 or 8 years. And then had everything else, the guilt, was she telling the truth? Was she not telling the truth? Only really then went through a lifetime of alcohol, 50 other things, until eventually, I think it was at 46, 47, basically she started to then sort of unwrap it. And that sort of brought her up to today where she was, and I sort of asked her saying, if you could go back, would you change it? So I wouldn't change a thing.
Really?
Says, obviously, if the event didn't happen, I would be delighted. But everything has happened for a reason, because where I'm at now in terms of my enlightenment, and that's that sort of great overwhelm. I mean, when you go into a dark place and you're so far off who you truly are, and then you get that glimpse of light, or you can't unknow it. I think when you see something or do something going, oh, that felt awesome, and you sort of, you give the chimp a banana, the ego chimp, and you just go, listen, just go away a minute. I need to think here. All your beliefs and expectations, and, people are waiting for me and emailing me and doing whatever. Just shush. I need to time out. And hence, we go into the moment of silence, the moment of meditation, depression, whatever it is. It's the safe mode on the Windows. It's some people call it the screen of death, but it's actually the computer is going safe. And it's just that moment of going, hold on, I just need to go back to source here. And yeah.
Go
And I
back
think,
to source. Yeah.
and it's that moment of quiet that you can go, okay, did that. I can feel now that's not serving me. Okay, I need to start tweaking things and all that. And it's actually the things. Have you heard of Ikigai? It's a Japanese principle as such, but they talk about things that you're good at. Okay, so I'm a property investor. That's my background. I'm good at that. I understand it. I love Monopoly. I just basically ramped it up into the property world, and great. But that's not my passion. This for me now is my passion. Talking to people, I love it. Hearing stories and doing all that, and so I can get a lot of pushback, and people going, "Why don't you just stick to the property? That's what you're good at. That's what you do. You've been doing it for 20 odd years, and all the rest, And you're kind of going, "Yeah, but you've no idea. I'm starting to get a taste of what." The sort of the fire in the belly world has for me, and I'll never go back. Never. It's just kind of going. You know, it's just it's changed. I can't unknow what I know.
Mm.
So again, a massively long answer to your
Yeah.
question. But it took me to actually get to that point in my life. That great overwhelm. I drove myself so hard. And again, but it's kind of like massively long fishing rod. The problem is you're so far from who you actually are. You've no concept. It's just a massive tall Jenga tower, and you've kept going, you kept going, and kept going. We can't stop, and we're beating down the mortgage, and this is happening, and we're pushing for that in business and life and kids, and eventually it just the stack has to come down. That either
Yeah.
comes down in a controlled fashion, that comes down in a breakdown, that comes down in a timeout, that comes down whatever.
Yeah.
And if you don't let that sort of inner warrior scream, and you just don't let that child come up, that's the thing.
Mm. But it's funny when you say that, I kind of, even though to the world I might seem quite kind of sorted and, on top of things, that I don't know whether I'm going to have another kind of stress event like that again, because um there is an awful lot of in, and it's yeah, it's just it's hard. It's hard to kind of to know how to slow down, when to slow down, for me, my passion can, whilst it's a very positive thing, it can also lead me in many directions, and that can be stressful for me, because I'd end up saying yes to this because it might lead that direction, yes to that because it might lead that direction. I'm not quite sure which direction I really want, so I'll say yes to this, that, and the other, and everything, these 10 things, because I may want that. Do you know that kind of way? It's just like, I mean, it's been a busy few months. I can't, obviously bringing out a book and all of the stuff that went around that. And now it's slightly meant to be the calm after the storm, but it's still not calm, and I have all the demands of work and all that kind of stuff going on. So yeah, I probably, it's making me realize, even this conversation, that I probably, if I was looking at inner child stuff, the first inner child that I need to be looking at is this one right here. Do you know, that kind of way? So, and just kind of then seeing where that organically takes me in terms of my work,
Mm. I think, yeah, it's only that, I find the language is quite telling, but you don't, you only know from someone the way they describe things, and it's perception too. So,
In
but
what way the language is quite telling?
I suppose I have a slight fascination with words, in terms of have to, so when you talk to want to, have to, need to, and then you talk about, everything from stress and, hating that comes in there as well, so again, for me, I'm I try and look past, as you say, it's the stuff going on day to day. There's life, but then you kind of go, what energy is being attached to that? What is actually a passion? What's something you're good at, but it's just overwhelm? But when you follow the words, for me anyway, it's just, I find it fascinating when I talk about the love language. People go, "Oh, I'd love to do that," and the tone, the context, the depth of description you talked about when you were sort of in your bare souls, dancing, hoop earrings, gypsy dress over in America, doing all that, just the level of complexity of that description, and
Yeah.
the tone, the smile on the face, and doing everything else, then vice versa in terms of I love to do this, but then I can't say no, you know, and that's sort of there's all sorts going on, you know. But then again, that's just me. I'm fascinated by the whole thing, you know, and what we're capable of, how we are to ourselves, what's going on, you know. But yeah, no, it's beautiful too. I mean, there's so many opportunities, and you know, people, you know, so many people are going to learn from this book, you know, and that's something to be massively proud of, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I guess. Yeah, it is. It is. It is something to be proud of. Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
your guilty pleasure? Or take the guilt out of it if you want, and just your pleasure.
I like chocolate. I like wine. I have the odd smoke sometimes, which I know I shouldn't. Just I like dancing. I like going. I have a friend in Spain that I haven't been able to see in a year, and whenever we go, like she's 4 years younger than me. 4 years, 4 days younger than me. So we spent our 40th birthday together in Amsterdam and just had a mad 2 days together. And whenever we're with each other, we're just like, you know, she just gets me. Like, I've known her since I was 15, and she just knows the real Malie. You know, she's just like, she knows the mad side of me. She knows the more kind of controlled side of me. She loves every side of me. We just free flow when we're with each other. It's incredible. Our conversations are just, they're just so, like, they just go on and on. There's no discomfort. You know, I had an operation last year, and she was with me for some of it, and she washed me. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of friend she is. She, you know, there's a real kind of, I don't know, there's something really deep there. There's something really, really deep, like really spiritually deep in our friendship. So I know that whenever something reminds me of Caroline, when something kind of, you know, I gravitate towards it, you know, like even the colors of my book, you know, like she's big into blues, and there's just something just so deep in my friendship with her, that I don't even know what the question was. What was the question? Oh yeah, my guilty pleasure. My guilty pleasures are always with Caroline, like as in, you know, I'd meet her at the door and she'd go, like, she'd have a glass of wine in one hand and a cigarette in the other, even though I know I shouldn't like be doing that, and that's back in my old days, and I don't smoke anymore supposedly. But it's just the mad side of Malie, where we can listen to The Cure and reminisce about boys that rejected us, and about being, you know, teenagers. We lived in Korea at the time. My dad, his job was there, and just, it was us against the world, really. And it still feels like that. And we still talk now about how when we're in our 60s, when we retire, that I would go to Mallorca and we'd like, you know, we'd have a house together, you know, like my husband, I'm sure I will let him in some of the time, but that it would be us as old grannies still drinking our wine and smoking our fags and just kind of listening to music and just being ourselves. Do you know, that kind of way? Just, you know, at the beach. And I feel a real, actually one thing that I've done lately is that I've gone swimming in the sea. I did it twice last weekend. Once with Ruth, the girl who kind of thought of my title of my book, really good friend. And it was just really like therapeutic to go swimming in the sea, like therapeutic, just kind of, I felt like it was a challenge. This was hard because I hate cold water, but I just did it. And she just said, Malie, just breathe as you're going in. And she went in, you know, and we went in together, and oh my God, I just felt like on top of the world. It was a sunny morning in Salt Hill. We went for a walk and a coffee afterwards, and I just felt my whole body was tingly, and just, I felt so alive. And I am a Pisces, so I don't know, you know, and Caroline's a Pisces, whether there's anything to do with being a fish in the water, but there was definitely like, there's definitely something about that that I need to explore a little bit further. So yeah, I have loads of guilty pleasures. I am bold sometimes. I definitely have a kind of a bold side to me. You know, I like to have fun. I like to have fun still, so I'm not always serious, definitely not.
Why still?
Still, I guess you kind of feel like, you're in your 40s and you've kids, and I don't know, like for a few years, our lives were on pause because our children were so young. You know, that when your kids are young, you're not going to like drink wine until midnight, um, because you don't know how often you're going to be up during the night. That would be a really stupid idea. Do you know what I mean? Like, when we had the babies, we weren't even like going to bed at the same time or in the same room, for God's sake. So it's just like, it's self-preservation when you've babies. Do you know what I mean? Like
Sure.
literally, you don't know what's going to happen at 2 a.m. Whereas now we're fairly certain that at not 8:30, they're gone for the night, and if they're self-sufficient enough that if they do wake up in the middle of the night, obviously you're not going to be, you know, like had rat arse drunk, but that you're going to, like, as in you just have more freedom as they get older. You can come back to yourself that little bit more, I think. I think you do. There is a certain pause button you press when you do have kids initially, and you're always going to have them in the back of your mind no matter what. So even on a night out, I could, I had a great night out over the summer with two of my friends, Hannah and Ruth, and we had great fun. But I would always have that little niggle in my head that says, but you're going to be hungover tomorrow, or you're going to be tired. And what, is that are you going to have a fight then with your husband, or are you not going to be present for your kids? And are you going to be in shit form? And there's that niggle. But you know what? I didn't just have that niggle when I became a parent. I always had that niggle, even when I wasn't a parent, which sucks to an extent, because I feel like I didn't properly like take advantage of just going absolutely crazy without having this little voice that said, are you sure that's a good idea, Malie? Do you know what I mean? So there's a real kind of like a devil and a kind of a good side playing, and different voices that I hear, I won't ever go too mad. Do you know what I mean? Not too mad. Like, when I'm reading a book about a guy, Brian Penny, who's had drug addiction, and it's a really, really good book, bonus time. But I am too self-controlled a person to become a drug addict, if you know what I mean. It would just never happen. And I'm not at all like putting anyone down who gets problems with addiction, but it just wouldn't happen to me because I am too self-controlled to do that. Do you know what I mean?
It's amazing. I think
Yeah.
I'd call it not, that's why I come back to it. It's like midlife opportunity, is it naughty 40s? I can't remember. There's different things to talk about different decades, but I think as you say, when you get to the stage that the kids can get up and make their own bloody breakfast,
Yeah.
and like I say, they're give or take, they're fairly safe around the house and they're all right, but that's suddenly you just as you go, okay,
Yeah.
and you're far enough into mortgages and life and all the rest. But I think that's also the point when you go, what's it all about?
Yeah.
It's like I can kind of see where I've got so far, and then I could just map that out and flip that over, and I can kind of follow the line. And that's where I got to. And kind of when you follow the line, and give or take, it was halfway through my career, and you're kind of going, am I okay with that?
And is that when you changed career, Pete?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
And that's, well, it's a mixture. We lost the business. So I've always had the property. That's always been there. We had another business, and then the kids and everything else. And it was like, for me, that was a point of great overwhelm. I had to isolate. I had to isolate myself mentally, and in some ways I kind of still have, and only because I think self-preservation, but also being very, very aware of who's taking your energy around you. Not a bad way, because even doing this, and people saying, how do you preserve, talking to so many people? It's a different space, I think, to counseling or to whatever, because, this is not a, he said, she said. There's a microphone, there's an intention, it's positive, people talking about their passions, their desires, things like that, and that in itself holds the conversation in a very special place.
Yeah. How did you come up with the idea for the podcast?
24th of February last year. Literally was, I'd lost my tooth the Christmas past. I was pushing the twins up the road. They were babies. And I just, again, just that moment of silence. And you're kicking it around. I couldn't physically do any more than a day. You know, the way you get to that point, you're going, it's just impossible. Where we're at with the business, you kind of going, right, you know, we'd sort of reinvented, we'd tried to, you know, we'd cloned the business, done all sorts. And eventually going to go, right, if I want more money, then I need more staff. If I need more staff, then I need more work, and then I need more systems, and you're just kind of going, right, that's going the wrong way. Hold on, I'm now responsible for more bloody people just because I want more money. And not only that, I actually want more time at home, you know, because I've just lost a tooth from grinding my teeth in the sleep.
Wow.
You
Yeah.
know, that just kind of, I don't do that. But that, you know, listen, that's what was going on inside. Things happen for a reason. But and I was just sitting there going, my formula is not right. You know, and I had just by coincidence, well, nothing's coincidental really, but I'd met somebody and they were very successful, you know, as in financially and property world and all the rest. And you're just sitting here going, you know, they are literally sitting there. They started at the age of 41, very normal. I met them when they were 65, and they were, you know, the debate in the room, you know, in this sort of meeting we had with them was, he was trying to debate whether or not he was going to hit the billion in terms of $1 billion in terms of personal wealth by the time he died. You know, has
Wow.
a
Oh my
60-year,
God.
I know, it's just,
Wow.
and I'm sitting here going, you know, so I have a big property goal, and I was telling him this, and he was like going, "Oh, right, so that's this year." I was like, "No, that's my goal for the rest of my life." You know, my point to all this was my formula was just wrong. Not wrong. It served me up to that point, and I just knew that it couldn't continue. And that's when you need to go back and say, "Well, what if?" Or I don't know. I need to go ask the question. And that's kind of where I'm kicking around, like say I'm pushing the pram up the road, and I have a photo. It's awesome, and you know, it's like what makes, you know, what makes you get up and go do your business, and you know, want to learn more and do more and write a book and do this, and then you go to the next person, they want to get up and turn over the TV channel, and then you meet the next person, they want to swim the channel, and they want to run an Ironman and do this, and you know, and you kind of go, what's hold on, what's going on here? And talk about what's, you know, gut feeling and energy and drive and passion and blah blah blah. And that's what just kept coming back, you know, fire in the belly.
And what is there commonality then in terms of, you know, the people that you've spoken to, you know, like what are the commonalities that you've found, and what is, yeah.
A number of things. Sorry, this is turning more into me, but
Yeah.
um, did I I believe everyone is born. I think as long as you have a heartbeat, you have a fire in the belly. I think you could be standing on the edge of a bridge ready to commit suicide. You have a fire in the belly. Now, fair enough. Granted, it's a very small flame and it's a way off in the distance because you're still alive, but it's there. I think the person who is top of their game, successful, whatever that means to you, it could be just spiritually who they are, financially, whatever, and they have a roaring flame inside them, you know. But that's the one beautiful thing I think, you know, is we all are capable. Um, you know, as I say, I talk to successful people, you know, and success could be the fact that you're alive today. Success could be that you've earned, you know, 100 quid. It could, it doesn't matter. It's your perception of it.
Mm.
There is a very, very strong commonality that comes through in terms of people getting to, like, say, a midlife opportunity, as I like to call it, is where they just suddenly let go, and they max out in terms of energy, life, where they're at, and they start scratching their head going, what's this all about? You know, I deserve it. I want more, you know. And it's not, I kind of have problems because people go, you know, what are you most proud of? Or, you know, what are you doing it for? I'm doing it for the kids. I kind of struggle with that. You know, that's to me is disassociation. You know, it's like doing it for the kids. What about you? You know, because if you're the best person you can be, your kids automatically will fall under that radar. You know, they will come under that, they will gain, you know, as opposed to, well, my life's nearly over and I made some mistakes, but I'm gonna sure as hell make sure that they have the best life. Really? Okay. How about just fueling your own ship first?
Mm.
And there's, like I said, just talking to people, and it splits that life can change in a split second. It really
Yeah.
can. Everything, your meaning, your structure, your purpose, and you'll know this from, you know this a hell of a lot better than I ever would. Um, it just changes in the blink of an eye. It could be a word, could be a thing, and it's like, well, what if, you
Mm.
know, Will Smith doesn't know it yet, but he's coming on this show in the next 5 years.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's awesome just to have a deep, fun conversation. I don't even care if it's even aired or not. It's not about that. It's the connection. I love just connecting with people and seeing that.
And
It's
what
just
is it
it's just
about Will
beautiful.
Smith?
I mean, listen, there probably is a bit of ego there too, of course, but I just love the depth. And even the likes of Jim Carrey, they talk about laws of attraction, they talk about visualization, they talk about, it's like there's so much hard work gone in, but also they're sort of unleashing their potential, and there's so much there. And they're also still quite humble in who they are, and sort of helping others. I love that, and kind of you're super successful, as
Mm.
in they are making sure they're the tallest standing poppy they can be, or sunflower, whatever your acronym is. They are trying to be their tallest structure, but also they are sort of nurturing and nourishing everyone around them at the same
Mm.
time.
Yeah.
And it's like, you build a rocket by facing upwards. That's what you do. For me now is kind of going, yeah, I've crazy schedule, but I do, mind with the kids, and I do all this as well. I'm a long way from being perfect, but I'm loving it, and just picking up the energy and beautiful conversations and connections and stuff that's going on around. And I know, like I say, bring a bag of popcorn, and I'm kind of curious where I'm gonna go. It's like,
It's
this is
brilliant.
interesting.
It's fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah.
for me, when you say about Will Smith, one person that I would love to get my book to is the likes of Brene Brown. I just absolutely love her podcasts. And, when she kind of speaks to me when I hear her stuff. And I did email her, whoever her website, never got an answer. And I kind of like, I don't know what to do, or even to get it to Oprah Winfrey. But then I'm like, am I silly to even think that they would want to read something like that? And how do I, for me, I kind of feel like I have dreams about it, but about it reaching, further than Ireland, but I just don't know how to kind of go about doing that. Do you know the kind of way, it's and then I don't know how much to push. That's my thing. I don't know how much to push, because sometimes pushing can um can just be really tiring, and then you feel disappointed if it doesn't work out. So I'm kind of just percolating at the moment, and just seeing, just taking a break from the promotion of the book, or of trying to, I'm just hoping someday. And it's not to say, if Brene Brown saw it, or Oprah Winfrey, would mean that it's a great book, and that's not a great book because I haven't seen it. But I just feel like I know it's at that level. I know it is. Do you know what I mean? I know I've written something that's pretty special, and it's because it came from the heart. Because it really came from, like, it came from, and I know everybody will say, oh, it's blood, sweat and tears, blah blah blah, but it really did. And I poured everything I could possibly pour into it, probably more than I even should have, but I did. So I guess there is an ego part of you that wants recognition as well, or wants kind of, or listens to podcasts and goes, my material is up to this standard. Do you know what I mean? It is. And people should know, the wider audience should know this stuff, or should, be great if they did, they could benefit. But again, I just have to just see where that goes. And I don't know how much to, I'd ask you the same. Are you making efforts to get Will Smith onto your podcast? How far are you going to push that?
I'll push it all the way. He's coming on, there's no doubt. And
Okay.
that's, you sort of asked in terms of, I kind of, when I'm talking to someone and I know they've got a fire in the belly, and that's sort of kind of what I do with, working with people, when they've got the seed of an idea and it's kind of going, right, time to set the boat on fire, really just because you know when they've got their passion project, because they're emailing people at 2 o'clock in the morning. They are emailing 5 people because that may get them one connection
Yeah.
closer. But the whole point is the work and what they do actually brings them energy. They're energized talking. I'm energized talking to you. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and that's the thing. So it's not taking from. Yes, okay. I mean, it's a long day, of course. Physically, it's but at the same time, you kind of go, no, I've learned so much in that conversation. I'm inspired by so much there as well. It's kind of go, that's a value add proposition. That's a win-win.
Mm.
And then, but you kind of go, right, and then you speak to such and such and such and such, and this is all preparation to talk to my top 10. In terms of Will Smith's just one of them. Um,
I really feel for you, if I'm to kind of tell you how I kind of feel you, is that spirituality is going to be very useful for you. It's going to be very I think you are spiritual, and spirituality comes in, and when there's even a light around you sometimes when you talk about that. And I definitely there's something about the last few weeks that I've decided, okay, well, I'm not going to push for that. I had been, there was a situation where a few weeks ago I was going to be on I was suggested that I might be on a TV show, right? I can't say which TV show. And they had said, oh, we're really interested in you doing it. And then I got a call to say, or an email to say, actually, because you've just done another TV show, probably better if you don't do this one as well, because we don't want to confuse people, blah, blah, fine, grand. And I kind of, it was the day after I also found out I didn't get nominated for the book awards in Ireland, and the nominations were actually announced today. And I did feel like, fucking hell, I should have been nominated for that. Like, I know in my heart I should have been. They couldn't have read my book. Like, honestly, I really felt that. But obviously there's people that are well worth it. And that was that. So 2 days in a row. I think some other thing happened as well, that there was a rejection in a way. But I kind of just took it and just went, okay, this is okay. And I was very gracious back to the person who said, for not to be on the TV show. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. It's I felt like it wasn't like something that I was like had to do. It was like, see. But I had a very calm kind of reaction to it. And then lo and behold, a week later, I get a call, on a mundane Tuesday afternoon when I'm sitting in work, to say, actually, we've all thought about it and we really want you to do it. Like, we have thought long and hard about it. We've convinced the TV people to do that. We want you to do it, and we really want you to do it. And it kind of made me think that pushing is not the only way to get what you want. And that's where I'm coming at it with you. I'm not saying spirituality is necessarily the way of getting Will Smith on your podcast. But what I'm saying is, and maybe I'm talking to myself more than I'm even talking to you, but what I'm saying is that and I'm sure you've spoken to people who set a goal in their minds and they do vision boards and blah, blah, whatever. But I definitely feel that there's a spiritual side there that probably for me needs further exploration, but I think for you perhaps as well. Do you know, that kind of way? There's something there. And I can't put my finger on it, but there is, from my interaction with you the last hour and a half or whatever.
Well, first of all, thank you. This is kind of this has caught me by surprise in the last, more so in the last year, and like I say, the last couple of months. Having these connections, these conversations. And like I said, I've loved this conversation, and it's kind of giving yourself the strength to go, or the space to sort of go, okay, that's interesting. Why did that happen? And but also being very clear in your intentions too. Like I say, it's whether it's an award or like I'm speaking at different events now, and that's happened. I didn't necessarily go asking, but it's kind of going. People are going, you're just like omnipresent. You're just everywhere, and everyone's speaking to you and doing it, it's kind of going, well, of course you have to be on stage, and it's like, well, I didn't apply. It's like, no, it's fine, it's done.
Mm.
But that's, I think, humans, when you have that level of clarity, and the silence sometimes is more deadly. Even a pause has a purpose. That's what I love to say. It's like, listen, sometimes, just as you say, it's
I love that. A pause is a purpose. I love that. That's true.
and having a gap, or letting people speak or do, and even, as you were saying, you were getting a response back about the show, and it's kind of, it'd be so easy to let the monkey at it, and go, right, Chimp says, screw you, blah, 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 whatever, it's like, I don't know why I don't fit in your show or whatever. Whereas actually you go, okay,
Yeah.
I
Fine.
trust that the right thing will happen.
Yeah.
And suddenly stuff starts to happen. You're kind of going, that's a wee bit creepy, but okay.
And it's funny because after that email, I actually got a feeling that something about this is going to perhaps change. I don't know what it was, this sense, but I just didn't I just went, I'm just going to, because really it was about kind of accepting that my self-worth wasn't attached with this thing of whether people want me or they don't want me. The media world, one thing I've learned is that it's extremely fickle. You know what I mean? It's like they want you one second, they don't want you the next. It's to do with filling content a lot of the time. It's not necessarily to do with other stuff. And it's kind of, it's not tying your sense of self-worth, I suppose, into these things, and also trusting that the universe there's a reason you're not doing something, or there's a reason that I didn't get nominated for a book award. I don't know what that bloody reason is, but there is a reason, I am sure. But oh yeah, the reason what probably is that they're not having a full-on event where, like, for me, I was actually really looking forward to the idea of going and glamming up and going to an event, but you wouldn't get to do that this year. It's all online, and online is just not the same, really. So maybe one day I'll get to glam up and go to the event, and I'll look back and go, now I know why I didn't get nominated a few years ago. This was my actual passion project book or whatever. Who knows? This is my ego talking.
No, but why not? Listen, that's okay too, because I mean, that's a moment of celebration. We're so poor quite often at being grateful for, not grateful, celebrating ourselves and kind of going, yeah, because yourself when you talk about success, and it's like, well, what does it mean? What does success look like? And it could be wearing an expensive dress on the red carpet, whatever it is. And it's kind of going, but there's nothing wrong with that. That's not ego. That's a value-based thing.
Yeah.
You may get there and kind of going, do you know what? I'm just glad, or whatever. It doesn't matter that, do I need to speak to Will Smith? No, I don't. But it just it'd be kind of cool, and
but I wonder with the Will Smith thing, right? If you're saying that's something that you really want, then how do you think you'll feel? Like, will it be then? Like, sometimes people feel like when I do this, then I'll feel like I'm enough. Do you feel like you're enough right now?
yes, I do. That's weird, because like I said, those words would not come. That question I asked you, do you like yourself and do you love yourself? 3 years ago, I couldn't have answered it. Genuinely, I couldn't have. Not without, it would have been, yeah, sure, or whatever. You would have laughed it off, or whatever it is. Now it's kind of going, I have so much time for myself. It's like sometimes I literally sort of almost get a bag of popcorn and kind of going, oh boy, what have you got into now? And I've, talking to people and questioning people and just trying to be present. Because even, like, say, that's kind of why this thing of just sitting down and talking to someone for 2 hours, it's special. I don't know why. As humans, it's sad. You say to people, when's the last time you got to sit down without judgment? And now you were talking about with your friends, that was almost, the sort of the 15, year old friends that you go back at that, but that's, you go there, you talk without judgment. It's not, there's no ulterior motives. It's just there. It's a safe space. It's that. And that's kind of what happened with the podcast, and kind of people go and come and have that safe space and be here. And suddenly people going, do you know what? It was deep, but that was me. It was cathartic. I'm buzzed, and we're saying that in the sort of the sign up notes to people, we're saying is, listen, take it easy the rest of the day, because I don't know why that's the feedback we get, and people going, I was all over the place.
Mm.
And part of me says, do you know what? I celebrate that, but I also go, isn't it sad that we actually, in this super connected society, and everything else, that actually we're not being heard. We're marketed at, we're told what to do, we're pinged, we're dinged, we're tagged, we're, messaged, we're phoned, everything else. And it's kind of going, is anyone actually listening? Am I listening to me? You're too busy botting everything off that you actually don't hear your own voice.
Yeah.
And that's I think it's coincidental in some ways that, the Samaritans, it's their opening line, I believe, is, we're here to talk.
Mm.
We're here to listen, and
Yeah.
I think there needs to be more than that. That's fine as a sticking plaster, but that's kind of why I go, listen, that sort of give people the option to be heard and to be genuinely heard, and that's powerful.
Mm. And I've really enjoyed it. Like I did think when you said however many hours, I was like, what? But I can see how, I suppose there's a method to the madness, I would say. Is that a specific decision you made? I'm going to make it 2 hours or an hour and a half long or whatever, so that free flow can happen. Are you into neuro-linguistic programming by any chance? Or
yeah, I've done a bit of NLP.
Yeah.
But listen, you want me to learn something, do it.
Yeah.
And that was just the thing. And that's the one thing listen, it's really hard to say. I mean, nobody in our family's been affected by COVID, but it's been awesome. It's been so awesome. I think it's been so cleansing for the planet to basically cut so many ties, people to slow down, cut down their commutes, all the rest. And so everyone's scratching their head going, what is going on? Why did I travel, an hour to work, an hour back? Why did I do this? And, the kids, yeah, they're driving me mad, but you know what? It's kind of special, as you talked about, what else am I going to do? I might as well sit and bake a cake with them or do whatever. And it's kind of going, actually, I quite like my kids. It's like,
Yeah.
So I think, I mean, it's like, it is midlife opportunity. It's like the virus opportunity, the pandemic opportunity. We're never going to see this again, I don't think. And, hopefully not, because I've got to be sensitive. There's a massive impact, but for me, I've amazing people I've spoken to, and yeah, but I'm also getting to realize, like, everything it's perception. Things just happen. And it was a couple of things, and it's just weird, the synchronicity, and what's sort of something I was listening to this morning. And they were saying you can't experience anything outside of yourself. It's everything you feel is inside you. You
Yeah,
can't,
that's true.
And if you ever do sort of get close to experiencing something outside of yourself, which is like a near death experience or out of body experience, it's like, it's this mad spiritual awakening, crazy place, whatever, but everything happens within inside you. So if someone is cross, or you think they've said something, or somebody has sort of turned you down temporarily for the show, but and suddenly you run this script, because of this, because screw you, blah 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 blah, and this is, and you kind of going, hold on, that's all, you've run that all yourself.
I know. Yeah, that's true. That is actually really, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm definitely going to use that. There's a lot of what we've spoken about that I'm definitely going to write down, actually. But no, definitely, but that spirituality side, I think the kind of, for me, the pursuit has always been about want and try, email, write, do. And I'm actually realizing now that probably the sitting back and letting be, as one of the quotes that I show people in the recovery college is, I'm a human being, not a human doing. And I think the being side of it is certainly something that, it's like, my husband is very chilled out, and I kind of wish I had that chilled out nature. He just, if somebody writes him something that he doesn't like, he doesn't respond immediately. Whereas I'm just like, for fuck's sake, I can't believe I fucking said whatever. Whereas he's just like, it's all right. I'll get my revenge. Do you know what I mean? Like, revenge is best served cold or whatever. But no, I mean, it's not in that way necessarily, but he's just not as reactive. I'm very reactive. So I think it is a lesson for me now that if I'm not to go into overwhelm, that chilling out a little bit is probably something that that is good for me. That is good, that I want for me, you know?
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing what you love to do and you're heading the right way, you'll naturally you'll do whatever is necessary. You know, there's times as we do, we flip flop, we take on too much, but then you back off, you know, and you kind of go, right, okay. So, and I listen, we do. I scrutinize interviews and we go through, and you know, you kind of go, was that my best? No. Why was that? Okay, you know, sort of different intentions, or I was tired, or I was this, or was that, or whatever, you know, and you know, I was pushing it, and that's okay, you know, and you know, fair play to you. It's like there's a lot of questions, a lot going on, you know, and you know, and that's, listen, you know, doing books and everything else, it's success after busyness after busy, you know, and there's so much there, you know. So you know, fair play to you. There's a lot.
Thank you. You too.
Your serenity, you're looking very it's spaced out, I think is possibly the right word.
I'm just chilled.
If you were to describe your fire in the belly in 1 or 2 words, what would it be?
Hell yeah. You know, another thing that came from Brian Penny, who wrote this book, he kind of said things are either hell yeah or they're hell no. And usually if something doesn't spark something for you, if you don't feel, I mean, the fire in the belly, if you don't feel it in your belly, and I feel a lot in my belly, as I said, if it's not hell yeah, it's hell no. Do you know? It's but yeah, it's what gets you up in the morning. It's the spark. It's feeling alive. I know I'm not saying it in 1 or 2 words. I suppose hell yeah would be the best, which is really what comes to mind there. You know, let's
I
do
love
it.
that.
You know,
Because some of, I mean, some of the love language you use, you know, because earlier you talk about free and flowing and everything else in your sort of excited state, you know, I think that's.
And what do you mean? Tell me about love language, because I don't know about love language. Tell me about this.
It's just, you know, you say to someone, you know, what would you love to do? Oh God, you know, I'd love to go on holiday here, or you know, I'd love to go out for a meal here. But like, you know, and you get this love, you know, it's kind of this, because I used to call it a bucket list. Now, bucket list, the problem is everyone goes, well, I'm not going to die yet or whatever. That's for old. But, you know, okay, let's call it our love list. You know, what would you love to do? You know, time and money were no object. You know, I'm not saying you're, you know, rolling in cash mountains or whatever, but it's just, listen, things are just good. You're in a great place and stuff. What would you love to do? It's like, oh, you know, I'd love to go away for a weekend and just go out for a chill or walk on the beach and all the rest. And you kind of go, that's interesting. You know, suddenly we're getting the true you, because the chimp has sort of been given the afternoon off, you know, from ego and response and pleasing and doing whatever the chimp does. You know, he's still there, but he's just kind of, I paint my chimp visually, and you know, I painted and put a bikini on it and badly applied makeup, so I can kind of laugh a bit more at my ego now. But when you talk about the love language, people talk about, you know, God, you know, it'd be great to do that, or I'd love to do that, or God, can you imagine? But I listen, I couldn't do that, and then the kids and blah 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 blah. You know, it's the Mel Robbins 5-second rule. You know, that they sort of, it sneaks through unintentionally. You know, and you even start talking, going, you know, parachute jump. Oh God, I'd love to do that. Yeah. But I don't know. You know, and you start teasing that out, and suddenly they just, you can see the creative juices just starting to flow. You know, but then you kind of going, okay, what would you need to do today to potentially do that? You know, for me, Will Smith, God, I'd love to sit down with Will Smith. I just think it'd be super interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Kind of going, okay, well, if I interview put out an interview every day, or if I do this or I connect to this and I keep doing that, and the law of compounding, and write this, and eventually it's kind of going, well, of course he's going to want to come on the show. It's just the whole universe is bent in my favor. It's like, yeah, well, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So that's, if you're having to do something, it's telltale. It's either that it's not for you, or it's negatively loaded in some way. It could be just tired. It could be just needing to get scap or whatever. Have to, hate to, don't want to, accept all that. So I think our words tell us everything. So
yeah,
there you go.
I'm so chilled. It's great.
How can people reach out to you, follow you, track you?
I don't care. Contact me if you want. Find me, guys. If you want me, find me. I have a website, drmaliecoyne.ie. People, yeah, I'm on Twitter and Facebook. I have a Dr Malie Coyne Facebook page. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, whatever, LinkedIn. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with social media. I just, as in, I know it's part of life to promote yourself and to promote stuff, but sometimes I just feel like it's too much, and that I need to just switch off from all of that, because I'd be checking, and I feel actually happier when I'm off it at the weekend, when the kids are around, and I'm much less on it, and I'm checking less, and I'm just living real life. Do you know what I mean? There's a life on social media, and I've met lovely people through it. Don't get me wrong. And there's real community feel, but at the same time, so if you want to find me, find me. If you don't want to find me, don't find me.
Love it. Any final message?
I just want to say I've really enjoyed this conversation, Pete. I know my husband is Pete. I told you that. So Pete has been in my life for many, 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 many years. I love your name, Mighty Pete. Where did that come from, by the way? You told me. Tell me again.
It was long story. Years and years ago, I remember saying there was a boat called Mighty Haggis. And I don't know, I just picked up the moniker of, I talked about the Mighty brand, because my base company is called Mighty 247.
Oh, right.
And I picked it up, and it's funny, some people are really emotionally charged by it.
Really?
Americans love it.
Yeah. Oh, they'd love that stuff. Mighty Pete. Oh my God. Even Australians would love it. But
whereas locally, everyone's like, how dare you?
I know.
And you kind of going, okay, just it's a great memoir or it's a great sort of post-it note to myself every day. I kind of look, oh, Mighty Pete. Okay, so that's.
And do you actually call yourself Mighty Pete?
Yeah, that's what I introduce myself as. I mean, I'm not that vain, but I constantly.
Do your kids call you Mighty Pete?
No, they don't.
Does your wife sometimes?
I know, but like, how many Mighty Petes are there in the world, right? So it's
I don't know any.
It's like, and that's the thing. It's a little branding tick. That's all it is. It's like Gary Vee has it, everyone else has it. It's kind of going, I think by doing something that you just stand out, and it's kind of going, people going, oh, look at you. And it's like going, I don't really care.
Yeah, I didn't think that. I thought, fair feckin' play to him. Why not? I like that. Do you know what I mean? But I just wanted to say I've really enjoyed our conversation. I think there's just been a load for me to digest. I think I need to digest. Not that I need to, but I will digest. No doubt. You went deeper than I expected, but it's kind of made me think about where I'm at right now. Yeah. So thank you for that.
It's been fun. Thank you.
Thank you.